Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever looked at a product on a store shelf and just wondered what it actually costs to make? And I'm not just talking about the price tag at the register or even the raw materials and the labor. I mean the invisible costs and, yeah, sometimes the hidden benefits that literally ripple out into our world every single time something is produced. So today, we're going to decode the hidden reality of environmental economics. It's a totally fascinating look at how the things we buy shape our world in ways we rarely ever see. Okay, let's dive into this. On one side, we've got the economy, right? The massive engine of production, jobs, and growth. But on the exact opposite side, we have our environment. And there's this really delicate, often super strained relationship between economic production and the natural world. They are locked in this constant push and pull, connected by this invisible force that economists call externalities. So here is our quick roadmap for this explainer. 1. Economy versus environment. 2. Negative externalities and costs. 3. Positive externalities and benefits. And 4. Fixing market failures. Let's get right into it. Part 1. Economy versus environment. Uncovering the hidden side effects. Now, the absolute key to understanding these hidden side effects is this concept right here, the production externality. By definition, a production externality is simply a side effect from an industrial operation. In pure economic terms, it's the difference between the actual private cost of producing a good and the real cost that society at large has to bear. You can kind of think of it like a spillover. The transaction is supposed to just be between the buyer and the seller, but these side effects spill over onto innocent bystanders who had absolutely nothing to do with the deal. So the crucial point here is that these spillovers actually travel on two parallel tracks. First, we've got negative externalities. These are the spillover costs that actively harm a third party. And because the producer doesn't have to pay for that harm out of their own pocket, the free market actually tends to overproduce these harmful things. But on the flip side, we have positive externalities. These are spillover benefits that help a third party. Since the producer isn't getting paid for providing those extra benefits, the market tends to underproduce them. Basically, we're talking about bad surprises and good surprises. Part 2. Negative externalities and costs. The unwitting victims. Now, abstract economic theories are one thing, but visual evidence brings this right into reality. Imagine a massive ship running aground, leaking oil straight into the ocean, or industrial power plants pumping thick emissions into the sky. The companies responsible for this are producing goods that we buy every single day. But the people who live near that ocean or have to breathe that air, they are the ones actually paying the true societal cost. They're literally the unwitting victims of these industrial actions. And it's not just limited to big oil spills and factory smoke. Harmful spillovers happen all around us. Think about the noise pollution from a busy airport that keeps the neighbors awake all night, or chemical pollution from agricultural fertilizers running straight off into our rivers. It's the collapsing fish stocks from overfishing. Heck, even the methane emissions from massive cattle farms. Yep, cow burps. Those are negative externalities that degrade our shared environment. Okay, let's decode this for a second. That black line labeled MC is the marginal cost. That's just the private cost to the producer. But notice that red line right above it? That is the marginal social cost, or MSC. It's higher because it actually includes that spillover pollution cost. The gap between those two lines is the external cost that society is paying. And because the market naturally settles where the private cost meets demand, we end up overproducing this harmful good. See that resulting blue triangle? Economists call that dead weight loss. It visually represents the exact amount of efficiency and well-being that society loses simply because of this overproducing. Part 3. Positive externalities and benefits. The good surprises. To really wrap our heads around positive externalities, we first need to meet the free rider. A free rider is simply a third party who gains from a spillover effect of production without ever being charged for it. You basically get to enjoy a benefit that someone else paid to create. So, in economics, it turns out there sometimes really is a free lunch. Let's ground this theory with a couple of real-world examples: employee training and research and development. When a company spends money to train its staff, that business obviously benefits, right? But the knowledge and skills those employees gain, they don't just stay locked in the office. That education ripples outward. It helps their families, their communities, and hey, if they change jobs, it even helps competitor firms. The original company paid for the training, but society gets a total free ride on the benefits. And research and development is an even bigger engine for these positive spillovers. When a firm invests heavily in R&D to solve a problem, the ripple effects are just massive. They develop new products, entirely new materials, and discover way more efficient production techniques. Ultimately, all of this leads to huge consumer benefits and pushes the entire economy forward, creating a widespread competitive advantage. Other companies eventually adapt these breakthroughs, which means the original inventor almost never captures 100% of the value they created for the world. Now, this situation totally mirrors our earlier problem. Here, the social marginal benefit, the SMB, is actually higher than the private marginal benefit, the PMB, because producers know they won't capture all the financial rewards of their R&D or training. Since those free riders get some of it, they just don't invest as much as they should. So the free market actually underproduces these incredibly good things. That red striped triangle you're seeing, that's the welfare foregone. It's lost potential. It represents the benefit society could have enjoyed if we just produced more of this positive good. Part 4. Fixing market failures, correcting the balance. So the goal for governments here is to force producers to internalize their externalities. For the negative ones, that means making them actually pay for the harm they cause, which shifts that supply curve to the left. They generally do this in three main ways. First, through taxes, like a carbon tax that charges polluters for their emissions. Second, through fines or charges, like adding a fee to plastic bags to discourage using them. And third, through outright regulations, which simply ban certain types of pollution altogether under the threat of severe legal penalties. By doing this, the full brunt of the costs has to be borne by the producers themselves, which brings the market back into a healthy social equilibrium. But, you can't just use a stick. You also need carrots. To internalize positive externalities, the government financially encourages firms to create way more of those good spillovers. They do this by offering government subsidies, which is essentially paying companies to produce more of a beneficial good. They also use tax write-offs and inducements, directly rewarding companies that invest heavily in things like research and development. By lowering the cost of production for these specific companies, society actually gets to enjoy that red striped triangle of lost welfare we saw earlier. Which brings us to the end of our explainer. The economy is vastly more interconnected than a simple price tag might suggest. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative thought. When you buy your next product, try to look past the transaction. Ask yourself, who is secretly paying the hidden costs of this item and who is getting a free ride? Because once you start looking at the world through the lens of externalities, the hidden reality of our economy is literally impossible to unsee. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.